A Garlean base stationed in the country of Doma has heard whispers of a rebellious cell growing in strength. They didn't feel they had to worry about anything. After all, these were savages with mundane weapons and backwater technology. During the day, a commander welcomed back a group of fully armored scouts. They all saluted, giving their report before moving back to the barracks. All was well in the Garlean base. Like a well-oiled machine, everything ran smoothly. Except, the commander later checked in on the scouting party and noticed that caches of weaponry as well as ceruleum canisters were suddenly missing. He had all the scouts lined up, demanding answers. None of them knew what was going on, yet everyone was accounted for. Eventually, the commander spotted a scout walking toward the exit of the base. As he was about to shout at them, an explosion erupted behind him. The missing munitions and ceruleum had been turned into a bomb, ruining much of their machina and vehicles. The commander turned back around to try and spot the scout, but they were no longer there, having vanished in the chaos as alarms began to sound. After the fires were put out, the commander hastily went to the leading officer's chambers, only to find that they had been slain. The investigation on what happened had gotten nowhere. There was no evidence of a security breach, and no intel suggesting someone was going to target their base. In the shadows, a lone shinobi looked down on their handiwork from a nearby cliff. Resources destroyed. Machinery excessively damaged. Chief officer assassinated. They narrowed their eyes and felt this was a fitting punishment for the Garlean occupation. And in a puff of smoke, they were gone. There's a profession in this world so steeped in mystery that no one knows exactly when it began or who truly started it. Though the people that walk this path understand the value of obscurity and possess the talents that keep their secrets safe. Usually, only those born into a family of these silent soldiers learn the techniques of their predecessors. But for those with enough skill and willingness to abandon themselves for this cause, they might learn from a mentor. Today, let's learn the history and skills of the Far Eastern Shinobi. Today, let's learn what it means to be a ninja. As stated before, the history of ninjas is largely obscured. This may have been by accident, people forgetting to document their own origin in the heat of conflict. Or this may have been by design, convincing those with knowledge to stay quiet or silencing those untrustworthy that knew the truth. That being said, I may be painting a target on my back by bringing much of this to the light for you all, but it's nothing a dedicated researcher wouldn't also find, so I believe I'm safe. It's widely accepted that the true origin of ninjas began at some point during one of the many conflicts that came from the Hingan Islands off of Othard's east coast. You see, the peace that one experiences when walking the streets of Kugane was bought with blood. This archipelago had been battered by countless conflicts over many years. Factions, both great and small, had fought for power and authority for generations, and removing one group only made room for another to take its place. At some point during these conflicts, the beginnings of the ninja arts began to take shape. People honing this craft were fast, quiet, and if caught, deadly. While these talents were best suited to keeping one hidden for the sake of sabotage and subterfuge, it's believed these early ninjas didn't leave any survivors to explain what they saw, if they ever saw them in the first place. Because of this, no one can trace the roots of true ninjutsu back to a single source. The knowledge of when it became an official practice and when they began to use soul stones is completely shrouded in mystery. Make no mistake, this fledgling art was born out of the fires of conflict before it retreated into the shadows. Through violence and battle, it eventually evolved into what we know today as the ninja arts, or the shinobi. While its origins and early development are a mystery to us, what we do know is that after its refinement, multiple ninja clans were formed on the Hingan Islands. These clans hide their homesteads well, usually opting for locations that society would consider inhospitable or worthless, so they might hone their craft in peace. From what I've gathered, they would raise their children to walk the path of the shinobi and learn the ninja code. By keeping the clan numbers limited to the handful of families that made it up, it made sure they never had to go looking outside their walls for recruits, thus perpetuating their secrecy. At some point, these clans began to offer their services to local lords and leaders. Like blades for hire, they agreed to a contract, and it would be thoroughly executed. These contracts ranged from simple information gathering to espionage, sabotage, and even political assassination. This was all done in the name of trying to keep certain things in or out of power to perpetuate the peace of the land. However, the more contracts these ninjas took, the more people began to whisper of a group that was always watching, but never seen. Despite their best efforts, people began to know they existed. But this worked to their advantage. The fear of their presumed presence kept people in line, for better or for worse. Eventually, the art of ninjutsu found its way onto the continent of Othard, specifically in the region of Doma. You see, the Raijin family has ruled Doma for centuries, with the current ruler being Hien Raijin. But not all members of this family were fit to rule. About 300 years ago, King Saiyan Raijin lorded over Doma. His rule was a dark time. He used the nation's wealth and power to entertain himself and satisfy his vices on a daily basis. His selfish actions eventually led to him being put into substantial debt. To fix this problem and maintain his lifestyle, he taxed the people of Doma to the point of starvation and ruin. His younger brother, Shoen Raijin, argued with his older sibling to stop, but was tossed into a prison cell for his outburst. Meanwhile, a ninja named Sasuke from the Kagekakushi clan had sailed to Doma to fulfill a job. While completing his contract, he was disgusted by King Saiyan's reckless leadership and abuse of power. After satisfying the conditions of his duty, Sasuke vanished from the Hingan Islands. Eventually, he reappeared outside of Shoen's prison cell, setting him free. Together, they gathered their forces and built a rebel army that crushed Saiyan's few supporters and deposed him. After his younger brother, Shoen Raijin, was made king of Doma, he begged his new friend and ally to stay. Sasuke was also worried what would happen to this nation he had come to love if it was left without someone to protect its interests. Thus, Sasuke agreed with Shoen, but instead of serving the Raijin family, Sasuke would create a clan dedicated to the secret protection of Doma and her people. He retreated deep into the mountains of Yangshe, and there created the village of Shinobi no Sato. It's rumored that only those born in this village know where it is, but there he trained new families in the art of ninjutsu, and thus the new Doman clan became the country's shadowy protectors. For bringing the shinobi arts out of the Hingan Islands, Sasuke was labeled as a traitor and fool by many ninja clans. But because of this, for 300 years his successors worked alongside the Raijin family to keep the country prosperous. The only time this clan failed in its role was during the Garlean invasion. Some shinobi saw Garlean rule as what was best for their clan and Doma, and others disagreed for obvious reasons. That is the most complete history of ninjas I can provide. It can be assumed that the only reason ninjutsu made its way to Eorzea was because of how fractured the ninjas of Shinobi no Sato became. But with all this in mind, let us move on to the powers and abilities that makes ninjas so mysterious and dangerous. It goes without saying that a ninja's most infamous talent is that of deception. Their ability to hide, blend in, and fool all sorts of people and monsters keeps their presence obscure from observant eyes. Typically, a ninja uses these talents to avoid combat, doing only what is necessary to fulfill the mission and remain undetected. That way, no one will even know they were ever there in the first place. However, this does not mean they don't know how to fight. Far from it. They've spent centuries developing their skills to be able to take down some of the world's strongest opponents with a variety of moves. First and foremost is their skill with short blades. Easy to conceal and fast to deploy, these daggers, knives, and sometimes short swords serve as the primary method for a ninja to fight. A ninja combines their blade work with their already fast and nimble movements to create deadly combinations that cut and rend their target with a flurry of stabs and slashes. Each movement is meant to obscure what's coming next, keeping their opponent off balance throughout the fight. While these martial arts are extremely impressive on their own, it's only one part of their arsenal. The thing that separates ninjas from your traditional spy or cutthroat is their mastery of Attire, or more specifically, Mudras. Mudras are combinations of hand signs designed to draw in Attire from a specific source. The three primary mudras are Ten, which draws from the heavens, Chi, which draws from the earth, and Jin, which draws from man. By taking bits of Attire from the heavens, earth, and shinobi themselves, they're able to weave these fragments into impressive arcane phenomena. These hand signs, when used in different orders and combinations, creates different effects. This increases the ninja's arsenal tenfold. Having these spell-like abilities at their disposal makes them quickly adapt to any situation they find themselves in. Whether it's dealing with multiple opponents or a singular target, they've got an answer. Anyone foolish enough to try and capture one was met with a barrage of blades and abilities that they were likely unprepared for. However, before I move on, I did find evidence of there being a fourth mudra. Though it seems to be considered forbidden by most clans, and its true nature is only known to those that have mastered it. Lastly, let's move on to a ninja's choice of weapons and attire. Knives and similar weapons are a household tool for ninjas. Historically, this weapon type dates back all the way to the first Astral Era, and it's exceedingly common to see thieves and brigands make use of such weapons in crude fashions. But there was clearly an art to be discovered here, and it was perfected through ninja teachings. Knives proved to be a perfect ninja tool. Small and easy to hide, light and accurate when thrown. With a blade in each hand, ninjas are able to deliver a volley of strikes that's hard to defend against. Even people with weaker builds or smaller bodies find themselves on equal footing with larger opponents when using these weapons properly. The Ninja Garb has evolved with the profession over the centuries. Originally, it was mostly bundles of cotton fabric that was thick enough to shield minor blows, but light enough to allow superior freedom of movement. Eventually, things like breastplates and chainmail began to be worn beneath those fabrics to allow for better protection but still granting flexibility. As time progressed, the outfits began to reflect a clan's lifestyle and philosophies. But one thing that remained true no matter what was how the ninjas covered their faces. By concealing their head and entire body, a ninja is able to keep their identity hidden no matter who catches them. That way, no one can trace them or use that information to any sort of advantage. And that, my friends, covers the history, abilities, and choice of attire of ninjas. It's fortunate that this craft found its way to Eorzea, but at the same time it's unfortunate that it fell into Garlean hands as well. These powers and abilities are just as useful out of combat as they are inside the heat of battle, and no ninja is to be underestimated. To any who have chosen to walk the path of the shinobi, hear me now. A ninja is most dangerous when they've pledged themselves to a person, country, or belief. Let whatever you give yourself to be your guiding light, your anchor. That way, your honor is what will separate you from a butcher in the dark. Your skills can topple kings and pull entire countries from the brink. But if you do your job well, no one will know it was you causing these things in the first place. Hello everyone! Thanks for staying to the end of the lesson. If you enjoyed this and want to see more, subscribe and like this video to let me know I'm doing well. If there is a topic you'd want me to cover in the future, leave a comment about it and I'll see what I can do. Until next we meet, I'll be researching even more of our world's rich lore to share with you. Till then, stay safe my friends.